For 300 years, humanity had smiled, nodded, and said yes, sir, to every demand the Galactic Council made. They gave up their best planets, handed over their most advanced technology, and watched their children grow up speaking alien languages in schools designed by species that had never set foot on Earth. The Council called it integration. Humanity called it Tuesday. But what the Council never understood about humans was simple. Politeness isn't weakness. It's a choice. And every choice can be unmade. The day Ambassador Sarah Chun walked into the Council chambers and quietly said no to the Vrex Dominion's latest demand, the galaxy held its breath. They thought they were watching a diplomatic protest. They were actually witnessing the moment humanity stopped pretending to be harmless. Some species conquer through force, others through cunning. Humans, they conquer by being so underestimated that when they finally stop holding back, the universe doesn't see it coming until it's already over. This is the story of how the galaxy learned that the most dangerous predator is the one that spends centuries convincing everyone it's prey. Ambassador Sarah Chun adjusted her simple black suit as she walked through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Council station. Around her, beings from across the galaxy moved with the confident swagger of those who had never known defeat. The Vrex stomped past on their 6 powerful legs, their chitinous armor gleaming under the artificial light. The Zephyrians floated by in their environmental suits, their gaseous forms shifting colors with what Sarah had learned to recognize as amusement. The Korthak delegation marched in perfect formation, their military bearing evident in every step. And then there was Sarah, 5 feet 4 inches of unremarkable human in an unremarkable suit, carrying an unremarkable briefcase. She had learned long ago that being forgettable was humanity's greatest advantage in a galaxy that measured worth by size, strength, and the ability to destroy planets. The Galactic Council had been in session for over 3 centuries, and in all that time, humanity had been the perfect junior member. They paid their dues, followed the rules, and never, ever caused trouble. When the Vrex Dominion had demanded access to Earth's freshwater reserves, humanity had smiled and handed over the rights to 12 major river systems. When the Zephyrian Collective had needed rare Earth elements, humans had strip-mined 3 of their colonies without complaint. When the Korthak Empire had required a buffer zone against their enemies, humanity had voluntarily relocated 17 million colonists from the Outer Rim worlds. Each time, the Council had praised humanity's wisdom and cooperation. Each time, other species had whispered about how fortunate the humans were to have such understanding masters. Each time, Sarah had nodded politely and filed another report back to Earth's Shadow Council. The Shadow Council. Even the name was perfectly human. While other species created grand military complexes and towering monuments to their power, humanity's true government operated out of a series of unremarkable office buildings scattered across Earth. No flags, no ceremonies, no dramatic declarations of intent. Just quiet, methodical planning that had been going on for 300 years. Sarah's wristband chimed softly as she approached the main council chamber. The message was brief. Authorization confirmed. Proceed with Protocol 7. Protocol 7. Sarah had helped write it herself, back when she was just another analyst in the Xenopolitical Division. Back then, it had seemed like a fantasy, a thought experiment about what humanity might do if they ever decided to stop being the galaxy's favorite pet. Now, as she pressed her palm against the chamber's entrance scanner, it was about to become reality. The great doors slid open with a whisper of advanced technology. The council chamber was a marvel of engineering, a vast sphere lined with thousands of viewing galleries. At the center, floating on repulsor platforms, were the seats of the 12 major powers. The Vrex occupied the largest platform, their queen resting on a throne of polished bone. The Zephyrians had claimed a cloud of charged particles that shifted and danced around their designated space. The Korthak had built themselves a miniature fortress, complete with weapon ports that everyone pretended were decorative. And there on the smallest platform was humanity's single seat. Sarah walked across the chamber floor, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. The conversation that had been flowing among the various delegations died away, as eyes, sensors, and other sensory organs turned to watch the human approach. She could feel their amusement, their condescension, their complete and utter dismissal of her species. Perfect. Queen Zakth of the Vrex Dominion was the first to speak, her voice booming across the chamber through the translation matrix. Ambassador Chun, how pleasant to see you again. I trust humanity is prepared to discuss our latest resource allocation requirements. Sarah climbed onto the human platform and took her seat. The chair was simple metal and plastic, a stark contrast to the elaborate throne surrounding her. She opened her briefcase, removed a single sheet of paper, and placed it on the small table before her. Your Majesty, Sarah said, her voice calm and measured. I'm afraid there's been a change in humanity's position. The Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Oh, and what change might that be, little human? Sarah picked up the paper and read from it in a clear, steady voice. As of today, the United Earth government formally rejects the Vrex Dominion's claim to exclusive mining rights on Kepler 442b. Furthermore, we are withdrawing our consent for Vrex operations on New Geneva, Terra Nova, and the Centauri colonies. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah could hear the hum of the station's life support systems, the distant vibration of the massive fusion reactors that powered this monument to galactic civilization. She could hear her own heartbeat. Then, the chamber erupted. Queen Zakth reared back on her throne, her 6 legs scrabbling for purchase as her massive form swayed with rage. Impossible. The agreements were signed centuries ago. Your own species agreed to these terms. The Zephyrian representative, a being called the Speaker for the Winds, pulsed bright red. Human entity Chun. This action contradicts established protocols. Clarification required. General Thok of the Korthak Empire slammed his armored fist against his throne's armrest. This is unacceptable. The agreements are binding. Sarah waited for the noise to die down. When it didn't, she stood up and spoke a single word, no. The translation matrix carried that simple word to every corner of the chamber, rendered it in 1,000 different languages and communication methods. But somehow, in the original human English, it seemed to carry more weight than all the elaborate proclamations and formal declarations the Council was used to hearing. No, Sarah repeated, still standing. Humanity withdraws its consent. All of it. Every agreement, every treaty, every understanding reached between our species and the members of this council over the past 3 centuries. As of this moment, they're all void. Queen Zakth's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You cannot do this, human. You're a client species. You have no authority to make such decisions. Sarah smiled then, and it was not a pleasant expression. Your Majesty, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. Humanity was never a client species. We were guests, and guests can choose to leave whenever they want. The Speaker for the Winds pulsed a rapid sequence of colors that the translation matrix interpreted as extreme agitation. Human entity Chun, you misunderstand the nature of galactic civilization. There are consequences for defying the established order. Yes, Sarah agreed. There are. And humanity has spent 3 centuries preparing for them. She reached into her briefcase again and withdrew a data pad. Perhaps you'd like to review some recent developments. 3 hours ago, every human colony in disputed territory activated their planetary defense systems. Systems, I might add, that are considerably more advanced than what we've previously revealed to the Council. General Thok leaned forward in his throne. Impossible. Our intelligence reports indicate that human military technology is centuries behind ours. Your intelligence reports are based on information we allowed you to have, Sarah said calmly. Did you really think a species that went from wooden sailing ships to faster-than-light travel in less than 500 years had suddenly stopped innovating? We've been very busy these past 3 centuries. We just haven't been showing off. She tapped the data pad, and Holographic displays materialized above each of the major power platforms. The images showed sleek human ships emerging from what had appeared to be empty space, their hulls gleaming with technology that looked nothing like the crude vessels humanity had been using for interstellar transport. Our merchant fleet, as you've known it, was always a facade, Sarah continued. Every cargo ship we've operated has been a fully armed and armored warship in disguise. Every trading post we've established has been a military outpost. Every cultural exchange we've participated in has been an intelligence-gathering operation. The holographic displays shifted, showing human installations on dozens of worlds. What had appeared to be simple mining operations were revealed as vast underground complexes. Peaceful agricultural colonies were shown to have massive defensive installations hidden beneath their fields. The orbital platforms that humanity used for space commerce were demonstrated to be weapon platforms of staggering capability. Queen Zaktiach's voice was barely controlled fury. You have deceived us for centuries. No, Sarakerektiv. We've been polite for centuries. There's a difference. You assumed that because we didn't fight back, we couldn't fight back. You mistook our restraint for weakness and our compliance for inability. That was your error, not our deception. The chamber was buzzing now with rapid conversations in dozens of languages as the various delegations tried to process what they were seeing. Sarah could hear the panic in their voices, the disbelief, the dawning realization that they had completely misjudged the species they had been casually exploiting for 3 centuries. General Thok was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. Even if this is true, you are still vastly outnumbered. The combined fleets of the Council powers could overwhelm you through sheer numbers. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That's certainly possible. In fact, our analysts give us about a 30% chance of surviving an all-out war with the entire Council. Of course, that assumes you could actually mount a coordinated response. She tapped the data pad again, and new information flooded the displays. Financial records, communication intercepts, detailed intelligence profiles. The chamber fell silent as the various delegations realized they were looking at their own most closely guarded secrets. The Vrex Dominion is currently facing a rebellion in the outer spiral that's draining 60% of your military resources, Sarah said conversationally. The Zephyrian Collective has been dealing with a plague that's reduced your population by 12% over the past decade. The Korthak Empire is on the brink of a succession crisis that could fracture your military into 3 competing factions. She looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of every major power representative. And those are just the problems we know about from passive intelligence gathering. Should we choose to take a more active role in galactic affairs, well, rebellions can be armed, plagues can be weaponized, and succession crises can be influenced. The speaker for the winds flickered through a rapid spectrum of colors before settling on a dim blue that the translation matrix rendered as deep concern. Humanity-chun, you speak of actions that would violate every principle of galactic civilization. Whose principles? Sarah asked. The same civilization that has spent 3 centuries treating humanity as a resource to be exploited? The same principles that allowed you to displace our populations, strip mine our worlds, and treat our children as second-class citizens in their own homes. She closed the data pad and looked around the chamber one final time. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We will no longer honor any agreements that were made when we lacked full information about the true nature of galactic politics. We will no longer pretend that the exploitation of our species is somehow beneficial to galactic stability. Queen Zaktiach rose from her throne, her massive form towering over the chamber. And we propose instead, little human. Chaos? Va? Sarah smiled again, and this time there was nothing threatening about it. It was the smile of someone who had been planning for this moment for a very long time. What I propose, Your Majesty, is choice. For the first time in 3 centuries, every species in this galaxy will have the choice to interact with humanity as equals, or not at all. She picked up her briefcase and walked toward the chamber exit. The age of humanity's politeness is over. The age of humanity's honesty has begun. As the great doors closed behind her, Sarah could hear the chaos erupting in the council chamber. Voices raised in anger, fear, and confusion. Emergency sessions being called. Military advisors being summoned. Sarah walked through the crystalline corridors with the same unremarkable stride she had used when entering. But now, every being she passed seemed to notice her. The Vrex delegates no longer stomped with quite so much confidence. The Zephyrians' colors were muted and uncertain. The Korthak moved in tighter formations, their hands closer to their weapons. As she reached her shuttle, Sarah's wristband chimed with an encrypted message from Earth. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 authorized. Welcome to the new galaxy, Ambassador. Sarah looked out through the viewport at the vast Galactic Council station, at the hundreds of ships from dozens of species docked at its ports, at the monument to galactic civilization that humanity had spent 3 centuries helping to build. Then, she activated her shuttle's communication array and sent a simple message to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. The masquerade is over. Show them who we really are. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, and in the depths of space, humanity began to reveal what 3 centuries of careful preparation had created. The polite, harmless species that had been the galaxy's favorite pet was gone. What remained was something the galaxy had never encountered before. Humans who had stopped pretending to be anything other than the most successful predatory species the universe had ever produced. The Council had always wondered why humanity seemed so different from other sentient species. Now they were about to find out. And in her shuttle, as she set course for Earth, Sarah Chun smiled and began to plan Phase 2. Captain Marcus Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. Standing on the bridge of what the Galactic Shipping Manifest listed as the cargo hauler, New Horizon, he watched as his communications officer received the authorization codes that would change everything. Signal confirmed, Captain, Lieutenant Park announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. Authentication protocols verified. We are go for Revelation Protocol. Marcus nodded to his tactical officer. Commander Singh, bring us to battle stations. And drop the masquerade. The New Horizon shuddered as systems that had been hidden for decades came online. The dull, corroded hull plating that had made her look like a typical human rust bucket began to fold away, revealing the sleek, predatory lines of a ship that belonged in humanity's darkest nightmares. Weapon ports opened along her flanks like the eyes of some ancient monster awakening from slumber. The modified fusion drives that had been carefully throttled to maintain the illusion of inferior human technology roared to full power. Around the New Horizon, 17 other cargo ships underwent the same transformation. The merchant convoy that had been peacefully transporting grain and manufactured goods through Vrex space revealed itself to be a full battle group of human warships, each one armed with weapons that existed nowhere in the galactic database. Sir, Commander Singh reported, Vrex patrol ships are responding to our transformation. 3 cruisers and a destroyer are moving to intercept. Marcus settled into his command chair, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility that came with command. But this time there was something else. After 15 years of playing the role of a harmless merchant captain, he was finally free to show the galaxy what human military doctrine actually looked like. Open a channel to the Vrex ships, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the insectoid features of a Vrex naval commander. The alien's mandibles were clicking rapidly in what Marcus recognized as aggressive posturing. Human vessel, you are in violation of galactic shipping protocols, the Vrex commander chittered. Return to your previous configuration immediately, or we will be forced to disable your ships. Marcus smiled politely. Commander, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not cargo haulers. We never were. We're the UES New Horizon and her battle group, and we're here to escort human merchant vessels through this sector. The Vrex commander's compound eyes focused on Marcus with predatory intensity. Impossible. Human military vessels do not possess stealth capabilities. Our sensors would have detected you. Your sensors detected exactly what we wanted them to detect, Marcus replied. The question now is whether you're going to try to stop us from completing our mission. The Vrex ships had spread into attack formation, their energy signatures spiking as they charged their weapons. Marcus could see the confidence in their posture, the casual assumption that 4 Vrex warships could easily handle 18 human vessels. After all, every naval engagement in galactic history had confirmed Vrex's superiority over human military technology. Every engagement except the ones that had never been reported. Commander Singh, Marcus said calmly, target the lead cruiser. Single shot, minimum power. We want them to understand the new situation, not start a war. Target acquired, Captain. Particle lance at 5% power. The New Horizon fired. The beam that lashed out from her forward weapons array was unlike anything the Vrex had ever seen. Instead of the crude plasma bolts or projectile weapons that human ships typically employed, this was a coherent stream of charged particles accelerated to near light speed. It struck the Vrex cruiser's forward shields and didn't just penetrate them, it ignored them entirely, as if they weren't there. The Vrex ship's hull armor, rated to withstand direct hits from battleship-class weapons, parted like tissue paper. The beam carved a precise line from the ship's bow to its engineering section, carefully avoiding critical systems, but leaving no doubt about its destructive potential. The Vrex cruiser drifted in space, powerless and helpless, while its escorts tried to process what they had just witnessed. That was a warning shot, Marcus announced over the open channel. The next one won't be. The Vrex commander's voice was hoarse with shock when he responded. What kind of weapon was that? Standard human particle lance. Marcus replied truthfully. About 3 generations behind our current frontline equipment. Would you like to see what our real weapons can do? The silence that followed stretched for nearly a full minute before the Vrex commander spoke again. Human vessels, you are free to pass. Thank you, Commander. And please relay a message to your superiors. Humanity is no longer interested in being exploited. We suggest you adjust your policies accordingly. As the human battle group moved past the stunned Vrex ships, Marcus opened an internal communication channel to address his crew. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just participated in the first honest military exchange between humanity and the Galactic Council in 3 centuries. How does it feel? The response from his crew was immediate and unanimous, a cheer that echoed through the corridors of the New Horizon and transmitted across the battle group's communication network. Meanwhile, in a nondescript office building in Geneva, Director Elena Vasquez was coordinating similar operations across the galaxy. The wall displays in her command center showed the locations of every human military unit as they dropped their disguises and revealed themselves to a suddenly very nervous galactic community. Status report, she called to her operations chief. Phase 2 proceeding as planned, Director Colonel Hayes replied. We have confirmation from 37 separate incidents of Revelation protocol activation. No casualties so far, though we're seeing a lot of very surprised aliens. Elena nodded, watching as red indicators on her display board began switching to green. Each one represented a human military unit that was no longer hiding what it was. After 3 centuries of deception, humanity was finally showing its true face to the galaxy. What's the response from the major powers? Panic. Mostly, Hayes said with satisfaction. The Vrex are calling emergency sessions. The Zephyrians are trying to recall their diplomatic corps, and the Korthak are mobilizing their border fleets. Nobody seems to know how to respond to the fact that we've been lying to them for 300 years. We haven't been lying, Elena corrected. We've been understating our capabilities. There's a difference. Her communication console chimed with an incoming priority message. Elena accepted the call and found herself looking at the weathered face of Admiral Chen Zhao, commander of the Seoul Defense Fleet. Elena, we're getting communication attempts from every major power. They all want to talk. Let them want, Elena replied. We talk when we're ready, not when they demand it. What's the status of the home fleet? Fully revealed and holding position at the edge of the solar system. The diplomatic corps is having a collective breakdown, trying to figure out where our ships came from. Elena smiled grimly. The Galactic Diplomatic Corps had maintained a monitoring station in the outer solar system for 2 centuries, carefully watching human military activities to ensure that Earth's defensive capabilities remained within acceptable limits. What they hadn't realized was that they were only seeing what humanity wanted them to see. The Real Soul Defense Fleet had been built in the shadow of Jupiter's moons, using automated facilities that existed in dimensions the galactic community didn't know were accessible. When the alien observers had counted 50 human warships guarding the home system, they had been accurate. What they hadn't counted were the 500 additional vessels that existed in parallel dimensions, ready to phase back into normal space at a moment's notice. Any word from the Deep Space Reconnaissance Units? Elena asked. Admiral Chen's expression grew even more serious. That's what I'm calling about. We've detected massive fleet movements from the Korthak Empire. They're mobilizing everything they have. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. This was the moment she had feared, the possibility that had kept her awake for the past 5 years as humanity prepared for this day. Are they moving toward human space? Unknown. Our intelligence suggests they're responding to what they perceive as a massive intelligence failure. They're trying to reposition their forces to counter threats they never knew existed. And the other powers? The Vreks are pulling back from their forward positions. The Zephyrians are consolidating around their home systems. Everyone's afraid that if they miscalculated this badly about humans, what else might they have gotten wrong? Elena nodded fully. This was actually the best possible scenario. Rather than uniting against humanity, the major powers were becoming paranoid about each other. The revelation that humans had been systematically deceiving them for centuries was making them question everything they thought they knew about galactic politics. Keep monitoring the situation, she told Admiral Chen, and prepare the contingency fleets. If someone decides to test us, we need to be ready to respond. As Elena terminated the connection, her intelligence chief approached with a data pad. Director, we're receiving reports from our embedded assets across the galaxy. The revelation is having effects we didn't anticipate. What kind of effects? Client species are starting to question their own relationships with the major powers. If humans could successfully deceive the Council for 3 centuries, other species are wondering what they might be capable of. We're seeing independence movements starting to emerge on a dozen worlds. Elena absorbed this information carefully. Humanity's plan had always been focused on establishing their own independence, but they hadn't fully considered how their actions might inspire other species. The galactic order had been stable for millennia, built on the assumption that the strong naturally dominated the weak. Humanity's revelation that the weak could successfully resist the strong was challenging the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. Any sign of retaliation? Not yet, but our sources suggest that an emergency session of the Council is being called. They're trying to figure out how to respond to what they're calling the human crisis. Elena walked to the window of her office, looking out at the peaceful streets of Geneva below. Ordinary humans were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their species had just announced to the galaxy that it was no longer willing to be pushed around. In a few hours, when the news finally filtered down to the public, everything would change. Her secure communication system chimed with another incoming call. This one bore the diplomatic seal of the Galactic Council itself. Elena accepted the call and found herself looking at the dignified features of Chancellor Vorth, the Altarian who served as the Council's chief administrator. Director Vasquez, the Chancellor said, his synthesized voice carrying undertones of stress and confusion. I believe we need to talk. I'm sure you do, Chancellor, Elena replied politely. However, humanity is no longer bound by the previous diplomatic protocols. If you wish to open negotiations with our species, you'll need to submit a formal request through the proper channels. Brupe Chanels. Director, the Galactic Council doesn't submit requests to member species. We issue directives. Elena smiled the same cold smile that Sarachan had used in the council chamber. Chancellor, I think you misunderstand the new situation. Humanity is no longer a member species. We're an independent power, and independent powers negotiate as equals or not all. The Chancellor's expression shifted through several emotional states before settling on something that might have been understanding. You're serious about this. This isn't just posturing. Deadly serious, Chancellor. Humanity has spent 3 centuries preparing for this day. We're not bluffing, we're not negotiating from weakness, and we're not going to be intimidated into backing down. The galaxy has a choice: accept us as equals, or discover what happens when you try to force a species that's been preparing for war for 300 years. Elena terminated the call before the Chancellor could respond. Outside her window, the first news broadcasts were beginning to report on the anomalous military activity being detected throughout human space. Soon, every human on Earth would know that their species had just declared independence from an alien empire they hadn't even known existed. Elena opened a secure channel to her field commanders. All units, this is Control. Phase 2 is complete. Initiate Phase 3. It's time to show them what we've really been building out here. Across the galaxy, humanity's true capabilities began to emerge from the shadows. Weapons that violated known physics, ships that moved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, technologies that made the Galactic Council's most advanced achievements look like stone tools. The polite, harmless humans were gone forever. What remained was something that would force the galaxy to redefine its understanding of what it meant to be human. And in her office in Geneva, Elena Vasquez smiled as she began to plan for the new galaxy that humanity was about to create. Dr. Keiko Tanaka had been working in the shadow laboratories beneath Luna for 28 years, and in all that time, she had never seen the facility's true purpose revealed to outsiders. Now, as she watched through the observation deck's reinforced windows, she was witnessing something unprecedented: a delegation of alien scientists being given a tour of humanity's most classified research installation. The delegation consisted of representatives from each of the major galactic powers, along with several neutral species that served as observers. They moved through the laboratory corridors with the careful precision of beings who knew they were seeing something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Leading the group was Dr. Sarah Hassan, humanity's chief xenoscience officer, and one of the few humans who had been authorized to reveal the true scope of their species' technological capabilities. What you're seeing here, Dr. Hassan explained as the group stopped before a massive experimental chamber, is the result of 3 centuries of focused research into what we call applied impossibility theory. The Altarian observer, a being called First Scholar Meln, raised a delicate appendage. Forgive my confusion, but your species has always claimed to be behind the galactic curve in theoretical physics. Your published research suggests that human science is approximately 2,000 years behind our current understanding. Dr. Hassan smiled politely. Our published research reflects what we chose to share, not what we chose to discover. Would you like to see what happens when humans stop holding themselves back? She gestured toward the experimental chamber, and the barriers slid away to reveal what lay beyond. The alien scientists pressed forward, their various sensory organs straining to process what they were seeing. Inside the chamber was a small, spherical object that appeared to be floating in complete vacuum. But as the observers watched, the sphere began to change. It stretched, contracted, and twisted through shapes that shouldn't have been possible in 3-dimensional space. For a moment, it seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Then, it vanished entirely, only to reappear a few seconds later in a completely different configuration. Dimensional phase manipulation, Dr. Hassan explained casually. We've learned to create objects that exist partially outside normal spacetime. This particular prototype can access approximately 47 parallel dimensions simultaneously. The Zephyrian representative, a cloud of charged particles calling itself resonance of truth, pulsed through several confused color frequencies. Impossible. Dimensional manipulation requires energy expenditures that would drain a star. The technology doesn't exist. It didn't exist, Dr. Hassan corrected. We invented it. Just like we invented faster-than-light communication, matter compression technology, and what we call probability engines. She led the group to the next observation window. Beyond the transparent barriers, they could see a laboratory where human technicians were working with devices that seemed to bend reality around them. One technician was assembling what appeared to be a simple electronic component, but the device was clearly larger inside than outside. Another was testing a communication array that was somehow receiving messages from events that hadn't happened yet. Dr. Meln's voice carried undertones of disbelief. Your species claims to have mastered temporal mechanics? Not mastered, Dr. Hassan said modestly. We've just learned to cheat. It turns out that if you approach the problem from the right angle, time is much more flexible than anyone thought. The demonstration continued for 3 hours, each revelation more stunning than the last. The aliens saw manufacturing facilities that could build starships by folding space-time around raw materials. They observed weapons testing chambers where human scientists casually violated conservation of energy. They witnessed communications systems that could transmit information instantaneously across galactic distances without using any known transmission medium. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came in the final laboratory, where Dr. Hassan showed them something that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. This, she said, gesturing toward a collection of devices that looked deceptively simple, is our xenobiology research division. The chamber contained detailed holographic models of every known sapient species in the galaxy, along with several that the visitors didn't recognize. But these weren't just anatomical displays. These were complete biological, psychological, and cultural profiles that demonstrated an understanding of alien species that went far beyond anything achieved by the galactic scientific community. The Korthak military observer, General Vrak, examined the holographic display of his own species with growing alarm. This shows our genetic weaknesses, our psychological vulnerabilities, our cultural blind spots. How long have you been studying us? Since first contact, Dr. Hassan replied honestly. Every diplomatic exchange, every trade negotiation, every cultural event where our species interacted was also a data collection opportunity. We've been building comprehensive profiles of every galactic civilization for 3 centuries. She activated another display, showing the results of that research. Detailed analyses of political structures, military capabilities, economic dependencies, and social fracture points for dozens of species. The alien observers found themselves looking at information that their own governments considered highly classified. This is espionage on a scale we never imagined, breathed the Vrex observer, a scientist called Hivemind Fragment 7. This is survival, Dr. Hassan corrected. When you're the smallest predator in an ecosystem full of larger ones, you learn everything you can about everything that might try to eat you. As the tour concluded, the alien delegates were escorted to a conference room where they found themselves face to face with a human they had least expected to see. Dr. Richard Park, the elderly scientist who had served as humanity's chief technology liaison to the Galactic Council for over 50 years. The aliens knew Dr. Park as a humble, somewhat bumbling researcher who spent most of his time asking for technical assistance for more advanced species. The idea that he might be connected to the technological marvels they had just witnessed was almost incomprehensible. Dr. Park, said First Scholar Meln, I must confess that I am having difficulty reconciling what we have just seen with our previous interactions. You have spent decades requesting assistance with problems that now appear trivial compared to your actual capabilities. Dr. Park smiled warmly. Oh, those requests were quite genuine. We really did need help with those specific technical challenges. The fact that we were simultaneously working on much more advanced projects doesn't mean the basic problems stopped being important. He activated a holographic display that showed the progression of human technology over the past 3 centuries. The aliens could see 2 distinct development tracks: the public research that had been shared with the galactic community and the classified projects that had remained hidden. You see, we learned very early in our relationship with the galactic community that displaying superior technology was a good way to become a target, Dr. Park explained. So we adopted a dual-track approach. We shared enough genuine research to maintain credibility while pursuing our real objectives in secret. General Vrak leaned forward aggressively. And what were your real objectives? Survival, preparation, and eventually equality, Dr. Park replied simply. We knew that sooner or later, the current arrangement would become unsustainable. When that day came, we wanted to be ready. Dr. Hassan reactivated the xenobiology displays. What you're seeing here is the result of Project Looking Glass, our comprehensive analysis of galactic civilization. We've identified critical vulnerabilities in every major power structure, mapped out the economic and military dependencies that hold the current order together, and developed strategies for exploiting those weaknesses if necessary. The Zephyrian representative flickered through several alarmed color patterns. You're describing weapons of mass destruction targeted at entire civilizations. We're describing insurance policies, Dr. Hassan countered. Every major power in the galaxy has contingency plans for dealing with potential threats. We just happen to be very good at making contingency plans. She brought up another display showing the current state of galactic affairs. The aliens could see their own military movements, economic activities, and political maneuverings mapped out in real time. It was clear that humanity had been monitoring galactic affairs with a level of detail that approached omniscience. For 3 centuries, we've been the galaxy's most comprehensive intelligence service, Dr. Park said. Every human trader, diplomat, scientist, and cultural attaché has been collecting information. Every interaction with alien species has been analyzed and filed. Every weakness has been cataloged and studied. He paused to let this sink in before continuing. And now you know why we waited so long to reveal ourselves. We needed to be absolutely certain that we understood what we were dealing with. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the implications of what they had learned began to sink in. Humanity hadn't just been hiding advanced technology. They had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history, building a complete understanding of every civilization they might eventually have to fight. First Scholar Meln was the first to speak. What you're describing is not just preparation for independence. This is preparation for conquest. Dr. Hassan shook her head. Conquest requires the desire to rule others. Humans have no interest in governing alien species. We just want to be left alone to develop our civilization according to our own values. But if we don't leave you alone, General Vrak asked bluntly. Dr. Park's expression grew serious. Then you'll discover what happens when a species that has spent 3 centuries preparing for war finally decides to stop being polite. He activated one final display, showing a tactical analysis of current galactic military capabilities compared to humanity's revealed potential. The numbers were sobering. Even acting alone, humanity appeared to possess the ability to seriously damage any of the major powers. Acting in concert with the independence movements they had inspired on other worlds, they could potentially reshape galactic civilization entirely. This is madness, breathed Hive Mind Fragment 7. You're threatening to destabilize an order that has maintained peace for millennia. We're offering to replace an order based on exploitation with one based on mutual respect, Dr. Hassan replied. The choice of how to respond is yours. As the alien delegates were escorted back to their ships, they carried with them the knowledge that everything they thought they knew about galactic politics had just become obsolete. The small, harmless species they had been exploiting for centuries had revealed itself to be perhaps the most dangerous civilization the galaxy had ever encountered. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation was still to come. As their ships departed the Luna facility, the alien observers received a final transmission from Dr. Park. It was a simple message that appeared on their communication systems without any detectable transmission method. By the way, the message read, "Everything you've seen today represents approximately 15% of our actual capabilities. We thought you should know that before you make any decisions about how to respond to our Independence Declaration. Have a pleasant journey home." The transmission ended, leaving the alien delegates to contemplate a universe where humanity had been systematically deceiving them about not just their technology, but the true scope of their power. In the depths of space, the alien ships began their journeys back to their home worlds, carrying news that would fundamentally change how the galaxy understood the nature of power, intelligence, and the species they had dismissed as harmless for 3 centuries. Behind them, on Luna, Dr. Tanaka smiled as she watched the alien ships disappear into hyperspace. Phase 3 was complete. The galaxy now knew that humanity was not just capable of defending itself, but possessed technologies that could threaten the existing order. Phase 4 would determine whether the galaxy was wise enough to choose negotiation over conflict. And if it wasn't, Phase 5 would show them what happened when humans stopped playing defense and started playing to win. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous debate for 72 hours, and Chancellor Vorth could feel the strain wearing on every member present. The Great Chamber, that had once been a symbol of galactic unity, now felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Queen Zak-Th of the Vrex Dominion was pacing back and forth on her platform, her 6 legs clicking against the metal decking in an agitated rhythm. "This cannot stand. A client species has declared independence and revealed military capabilities that threaten the established order. We must respond with overwhelming force before this infection spreads." The speaker for the Winds, representing the Zephyrian Collective, pulsed a deep red of disagreement. Queen Entity Zak-Th speaks of force, but the human technological demonstrations suggest that force may be insufficient. Alternative solutions must be explored. General Thok of the Korthak Empire slammed his armored fist against his throne. Alternative solutions? They have been spying on us for 3 centuries. They know our weaknesses, our military dispositions, our political vulnerabilities. Every secret we thought we had is compromised. Chancellor Vorth raised his hands for order, but the debate continued to rage. In the 3 days since humanity's revelation, the Council had received reports that were reshaping their understanding of galactic civilization. Independence movements were erupting on 17 different worlds. Client species were demanding renegotiation of their tributary agreements. Several minor powers had announced their withdrawal from Council jurisdiction entirely. The humans had lit a fuse that threatened to blow apart an order that had maintained stability for over a millennium. "Honored members," Chancellor Vorth said, his voice cutting through the noise with practiced authority, "we have received a communication from the human government. They are requesting a formal audience." The chamber fell silent. After 3 days of humanity's radio silence, any communication was significant. "What do they want?" Queen Zak-Th demanded. "They wish to present a proposal for what they term galactic restructuring," the Chancellor replied. "They're sending a representative to address the Council directly." General Thok's expression was skeptical. "After what we've learned about their deception capabilities, how do we know this isn't another manipulation?" Before the Chancellor could respond, the chamber's main entrance chimed with an arrival notification. The great doors slid open to admit a figure that made every being in the chamber tense with surprise. It was Sarah Chun, but not as they had ever seen her before. Gone was the simple black suit and unremarkable appearance. Instead, she wore what was clearly a military uniform, its design unfamiliar but unmistakably authoritative. The insignia on her collar marked her as something more than an ambassador. She walked across the chamber floor with the measured pace of someone who no longer needed to appear harmless or submissive. When she reached the human platform, she didn't take the modest seat that had been provided. Instead, she remained standing, her posture radiating confidence and authority. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber without artificial amplification. "I am Admiral Sarah Chun, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Defense Forces. I come before you today not as a supplicant seeking favor, but as the representative of a sovereign power seeking to establish new terms of coexistence. The title hit the council like a physical blow. Admiral, Supreme Commander. The modest ambassador they had known for years had revealed herself to be the leader of humanity's military forces. Queen Zak-TH was the first to find her voice. Admiral Chun, your species has perpetrated a deception of unprecedented scale. You have violated every principle of galactic civilization. Why should we listen to anything you have to say? Sarah smiled, and there was steel in the expression. Because, Your Majesty, the alternative to listening is a war that no one in this chamber wants to fight. She activated a holographic projector that materialized images above the council platforms. What they saw made even the most experienced military leaders draw sharp breaths of concern. The displays showed human military installations throughout the galaxy, but not the modest defense platforms the council was familiar with. These were massive fortress worlds, bristling with weapons that dwarfed anything in the galactic arsenal. Ships emerged from hidden bases in numbers that suggested humanity possessed a fleet larger than all the major powers combined. Over the past 3 centuries, Sarah continued, humanity has established a defensive network that spans 47 star systems. Each installation is equipped with weapons that can destroy planets, disrupt hyperspace lanes, and project force across interstellar distances. Each one is also connected to what we call the TerraNet, a communication and coordination system that operates outside conventional space-time. The speaker for the winds flickered through several color patterns of distress. Such a military buildup violates numerous arms control treaties. The human species agreed to limitations on defensive capabilities. The human species agreed to limitations on revealed defensive capabilities, Sarah corrected. We have scrupulously honored every agreement we made. We simply made very different agreements than you thought we were making. General Thok leaned forward, his professional interest overcoming his outrage. Even with these capabilities, you cannot possibly believe you could defeat the combined forces of the major powers. Sarah's expression grew more serious. General, you're thinking like a traditional military commander. You're calculating tonnages and firepower and fleet sizes. But humans don't fight traditional wars. We fight asymmetric conflicts, and we've had 3 centuries to prepare for this one. The holographic displays shifted, showing detailed intelligence analyses of each major power's vulnerabilities. Economic choke points, political fault lines, military weaknesses, social pressure points. The council members found themselves looking at their own civilizations dissected with surgical precision. The Vrex Dominion depends on imported food from 17 agricultural worlds, Sarah said conversationally. Disruption of those supply lines would create famines within 6 months. The Zephyrian Collective's entire industrial base depends on rare isotopes from 3 mining systems. The Korthak Empire's military hierarchy has been infiltrated by our intelligence services at every level. She paused to let this information sink in before continuing. We don't need to defeat your fleets in open battle. We just need to make continuing the conflict more expensive than accepting our terms. Chancellor Vorth found his voice. And what are your terms? Sarah deactivated the holographic displays and clasped her hands behind her back in a gesture that somehow managed to be both respectful and commanding. Simple. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council and establishes itself as an independent power. In return, we guarantee that human space will remain neutral in any conflicts between existing powers. We will not interfere in your internal affairs, and you will not interfere in ours. And the client species that are demanding independence following your example. Queen Zak-TH asked pointedly. Their decisions are their own, Sarah replied. Humanity will not encourage independence movements, but neither will we discourage them. If other species choose to follow our example, that's a matter between them and their current overlords. The chamber erupted in angry voices as the implications of Sarah's proposal became clear. She was essentially offering to neutralize human military capabilities in exchange for recognition of their independence, but she was also making it clear that humanity's example had already inspired others to seek the same freedom. General Thok's voice cut through the noise. "This is unacceptable. You are demanding the right to destabilize galactic civilization whenever it suits your purposes." Sarah shook her head. "General, we're offering to withdraw from galactic civilization entirely. We want to be left alone. The only destabilization comes from other species recognizing that they have options they didn't know existed." She reactivated the holographic displays, but this time they showed something different. Peaceful human colonies, advanced research facilities, thriving trade networks that operated independently of galactic commerce. It was a vision of humanity as a self-sufficient civilization that needed nothing from the rest of the galaxy. "This is what we're offering to become," Sarah said. "A neutral power that minds its own business and allows the rest of the galaxy to mind theirs. We will trade with anyone who wishes to trade with us, defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us, and otherwise remain completely uninvolved in galactic politics." The speaker for the winds pulsed through a series of thoughtful colors before speaking. "Admiral Entity Chun, your proposal assumes that the major powers can simply accept the loss of human tribute and the precedent of successful independence. The economic and political implications are severe." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "I understand the challenge, but consider the alternative. If you attempt to force humanity back into compliance, you'll be fighting a war against an enemy that knows your every weakness while hiding most of its own strengths. Even if you win, the cost would be enormous." She brought up a new display showing economic projections. "Our analysts estimate that a full-scale war would reduce galactic industrial capacity by approximately 30% and result in the deaths of billions of beings. Is maintaining the current tribute system really worth that price?" Chancellor Vorth studied the projections with growing alarm. The human economic analysis was disturbingly comprehensive and appeared to be accurate. A war with humanity would indeed devastate galactic civilization, regardless of who eventually won. "What guarantees can you offer that humanity will honor this neutrality?" he asked. "The same guarantee we've honored for 3 centuries, Sarah replied. "Our word. Humans may lie about our capabilities to protect ourselves, but we don't lie about our intentions. We have never been the aggressor in any conflict, and we have no interest in becoming one now." Queen Zakth's mandibles clicked aggressively. "Pretty words, but you've demonstrated that human promises are worthless. How do we know you won't use your hidden capabilities to expand your territory once you've established independence?" Sarah's expression grew cold. "Your Majesty, if we wanted to expand our territory, we would have done so already. We've had the capability to conquer significant portions of the galaxy for over a century. The fact that we haven't should tell you something about our actual intentions." The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of decision. Every member of the council was calculating the costs of war against the costs of acceptance. Every military advisor was comparing human capabilities against their own forces. Every political leader was wondering how their populations would react to news of the conflict. Finally, the speaker for the winds broke the silence. "Admiral Entity Chen, you present a proposal that requires fundamental changes to galactic civilization. Such decisions cannot be made quickly." Sarah nodded respectfully. "Understand. But I should mention that while you're deliberating, human defensive preparations are continuing. Every day you delay makes us stronger and more difficult to dislodge. If you're going to choose war, it would be in your best interests to act quickly." She walked back toward the chamber exit, then paused at the threshold. "Oh, and honor members? You might want to consider how your client species will react when they learn that you've been offered a peaceful resolution to the human crisis, but chose war instead. Independence movements tend to be very motivated when they believe their overlords are unreasonable." With that, she left the chamber, leaving the council to grapple with the most significant decision in galactic history. In the hours that followed, emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds as governments tried to determine their response to humanity's ultimatum. Military leaders calculated odds, Economic advisors projected costs, and political analysts tried to predict the consequences of either choice. But in a secure conference room deep within the council station, the real decision-makers were having a very different conversation. "She's right, you know," Chancellor Vorth said quietly. "War with humanity would be catastrophic regardless of who wins." Queen Zaktiach's voice was bitter. "So we simply accept that a client species has successfully rebelled? What message does that send to every other subjugated world?" "It sends a message that the galaxy is changing," the Speaker for the Winds replied. "Perhaps it is time to change with it." General Thok was studying the tactical analyses with professional interest. "The human military capabilities are impressive, but what concerns me more is their intelligence network. They know things about our own forces that we don't know about theirs. That's a losing proposition in any conflict." The debate continued through the night, but the outcome was becoming increasingly clear. Faced with the choice between accepting humanity's independence or fighting a war they might not win against an enemy that had spent 3 centuries preparing for the conflict, the galaxy was beginning to realize that the age of easy domination was coming to an end. The humans had offered them a chance to avoid catastrophe. Whether the galaxy was wise enough to take it remained to be seen. 6 months after humanity's revelation, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. The Galactic Council had voted, by the narrowest possible margin, to accept humanity's independence rather than risk a war that could destroy galactic civilization. But the consequences of that decision were still reverberating through known space. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the newly completed starbase Terra, humanity's first openly acknowledged military installation. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the controlled chaos of a civilization in transition. Human ships moved freely through space that had been forbidden to them for centuries. Alien vessels approached human facilities under strict diplomatic protocols rather than the casual assumption of superiority that had characterized previous interactions. Status report, she requested from her aide, Commander Park. 17 independence movements have successfully established sovereignty in the past 6 months, Park reported. The Altarian Confederation formally withdrew from Council authority last week. The Centauri Alliance is demanding renegotiation of all tribute agreements. The Rim territories have formed a mutual defense pact that excludes all major powers. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Humanity's example had indeed inspired others, just as they had predicted. The galaxy's carefully maintained order was fracturing as client species realized that successful resistance was possible. What's the response from the major powers? Mixed. The Vrex are adapting better than expected. Actually, Queen Zakth has announced a new policy of voluntary association rather than forced tribute. The Zephyrians are struggling with the economic disruption, but they're exploring new trade relationships. The Korthak. Park hesitated. The Korthak are having problems, Sarah finished. Yes, ma'am. Their military hierarchy was built around the assumption of technological superiority. Learning that they've been outclassed for centuries has caused significant internal conflicts. Our intelligence suggests they're considering a military solution to what they call the independence contagion. Sarah had expected this. Of all the major powers, the Korthak Empire was the least capable of adapting to a galaxy where military force was no longer the ultimate arbitrator of disputes. Their entire civilization was built around the principle that the strong naturally dominated the weak. Any specific threats? General Thok has been replaced by a more aggressive faction led by War Chief Drakmor. They're mobilizing significant forces and making speeches about restoring galactic order. Our sources suggest they're planning some kind of demonstration of force. Sarah walked to the communication console and opened a secure channel to Earth. Director Vasquez's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but satisfied. Elena, we need to discuss the Korthak situation. I was expecting this call, Elena replied. Our analysis suggests they'll move within the next 2 weeks. The question is whether they'll target us directly or try to make an example of one of the newly independent species. What's our intelligence saying? They're planning to hit the Altarian Confederation. It's a test case. If they can successfully re-subjugate the Altarians, they think it will discourage other independence movements. Sarah felt a cold anger building in her chest. This was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. Humanity's independence had been designed to be a contained event, not the catalyst for galactic war. What are our obligations to the Altarians? Elena's expression was grim. Legally, none. We specifically avoided any mutual defense agreements to maintain our neutrality. Morally, well, they declared independence following our example. If we let them be crushed, it sends a message about what happens to species that try to follow the human path. Sarah understood the dilemma. Humanity had wanted independence, not responsibility for reshaping galactic civilization. But their actions had consequences beyond their borders, and those consequences were about to result in the destruction of a peaceful species that had simply wanted what humans had taken for themselves. Options. We can make a diplomatic protest, impose economic sanctions, or Elena-Pozud. We could intervene directly. The silence stretched between them as Sarah considered the implications. Direct intervention would mean abandoning the carefully maintained neutrality that had allowed humanity to avoid galactic conflicts for centuries. It would establish them as a military power willing to project force beyond their own borders. But it would also establish that the new independence movements had a protector, someone willing to stand up to the traditional powers on their behalf. What does the Shadow Council recommend? Split vote. Half want to maintain neutrality and let the Altarians handle their own problems. Half believe that allowing the Korthak to succeed would be giving the major powers a roadmap for rolling back all the independence movements. Sarah terminated the call and stood quietly for several minutes, staring out at the stars that had once been forbidden to her species. The weight of decision pressed down on her with almost physical force. Her contemplation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communication console. Commander Park accepted the incoming message and immediately called for Sarah's attention. Admiral, priority transmission from the Altarian Confederation. They're requesting immediate assistance. The holographic display showed the desperate face of First Minister Keln, the Altarian leader who had formally declared independence just 6 months earlier. Admiral Chun, he said, his voice tight with stress. Korthak forces have entered Altarian space in overwhelming numbers. They've issued an ultimatum. Surrender within 24 hours or face complete military destruction. We're not prepared for this level of conflict. Sarah studied the tactical displays that accompanied the Altarians' plea. The Korthak had committed nearly 3 full battle fleets to the operation, a force that could have overwhelmed most of the major powers. Against the modest defensive capabilities of a newly independent species, it was massive overkill. It was also a clear message to every other independence movement. This is what happens when you defy the established order. First Minister, Sarah said carefully, the United Earth government has maintained a policy of strict neutrality in interspecies conflicts. I cannot commit human forces without proper authorization. The Altarian's expression crumpled. I understand, Admiral. We had hoped, but I understand. We will do our best to defend ourselves. As the transmission ended, Sarah realized that she was looking at a moment that would define not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The choice she made in the next few hours would determine whether the independence movements would survive or whether the traditional powers would successfully suppress them. She opened a channel to the Shadow Council's emergency session that she knew was already in progress. This is Admiral Chun. I'm requesting immediate authorization to deploy Task Force Alpha under Protocol 9. Elena's voice came back immediately. Sarah, are you certain? Protocol 9 is a declaration of war. Protocol 9 is a declaration that humanity will not stand by while peaceful species are destroyed for wanting the same freedom we claim for ourselves, Sarah replied. The Korthak are testing our resolve. If we fail this test, every independence movement in the galaxy will be crushed, and we'll be back to being the only free species in a galaxy of slaves. The debate that followed was brief, but intense. In the end, the vote was unanimous. Humanity would intervene. 12 hours later, the Korthak fleet preparing to devastate the Alterian homeworld received an unexpected visitor. The UES Terra's Pride, humanity's newest flagship, dropped out of hyperspace directly between the Korthak forces and their target. War Chief Drakmore's transmission was filled with contempt. "Human vessel, you're interfering in Korthak military operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Captain Rodriguez, now commanding humanity's most advanced warship, replied with the politeness that had once characterized all human interactions with alien powers. "War Chief Drakmore, I'm afraid I cannot comply with that request. The Alterian Confederation has requested protection under the Terra Doctrine, and the United Earth Government has agreed to provide it." "The what doctrine?" "The Terra Doctrine, War Chief. It states that any peaceful species seeking independence from oppressive overlords can request protection from human forces. We're not here to conquer or rule. We're here to ensure that independence movements are allowed to succeed or fail on their own merits, not be crushed by overwhelming force." The Korthak fleet outnumbered the single human ship by 40-1. War Chief Drakmore clearly believed that overwhelming odds guaranteed victory. He was about to discover what 3 centuries of military preparation had actually created. The Terra's Pride fired a single shot. The weapon that struck the Korthak flagship wasn't just advanced technology. It was a demonstration of physics that the galactic community had never seen before. The beam didn't just penetrate the Korthak ship's armor. It reorganized the matter at a subatomic level, turning the massive warship into a cloud of component atoms in less than 3 seconds. The Korthak fleet found itself facing a human vessel that could destroy their largest ships with casual ease. "War Chief Drakmore," Captain Rodriguez said politely, "that was a demonstration shot. The next one won't be. I suggest you withdraw your forces and reconsider your approach to interspecies relations." The Korthak fleet retreated. Within hours, news of the engagement had spread throughout the galaxy. Humanity had not only claimed independence for themselves, they had become the protector of other species seeking the same freedom. The Terra Doctrine was broadcast to every world in known space, offering protection to any peaceful species willing to declare independence from oppressive overlords. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of species that had been subjugated for millennia suddenly found themselves with a protector capable of standing up to the major powers. Independence movements erupted on hundreds of worlds. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. The old order of strong powers dominating weak clients gave way to a complex network of independent civilizations choosing their own associations. Some species chose to remain with their traditional overlords, but now it was a choice rather than an inevitability. Humanity found itself in the unexpected position of being the galaxy's premier military power, not through conquest, but through the simple act of refusing to allow others to be conquered. The Galactic Council was restructured as a forum for equals rather than a hierarchy of dominance. Trade flowed more freely as artificial restrictions were removed. Scientific advancement accelerated as species shared knowledge freely rather than hoarding it for competitive advantage. Admiral Sarah Chun, standing once again on the observation deck of Starbase Terra, watched as ships from dozens of species moved through space with the confidence of free civilizations. The galaxy had not become perfect, but it had become something it had never been before, a place where strength was measured not by the ability to dominate others, but by the willingness to defend freedom. Status report, she requested from Commander Park. The last holdout systems have formally declared independence, Park reported with satisfaction. The age of galactic empires is officially over. Every sapient species in known space now governs itself. Sarah nodded, thinking about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 3 centuries of careful planning, patient preparation, and quiet determination had transformed not just humanity's place in the galaxy, but the nature of galactic civilization itself. And the major powers? Adapting. The Vrex have become the galaxy's premier trading civilization. The Zephyrians are leading a renaissance in scientific cooperation. Even the Korthak are finding new purpose as a defensive alliance rather than a conquering empire. Sarah smiled as she watched a mixed convoy of human and alien ships heading toward the outer rim. Humanity had learned that the most effective way to ensure their own freedom was to ensure that freedom was available to everyone. The day humanity had stopped being polite had indeed changed everything. But, perhaps more importantly, it had taught the galaxy that true strength came not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to help others dominate themselves. In the end, the greatest victory was not the one achieved through force, but the one achieved by showing others that victory was possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended all along.